Razia, welcome to Let the Quran Speak.
Thank you for having me.
So you are a relationship coach, and you do deal with a lot of married couples. So I thought it was pertinent and it would be interesting to talk about, how do you build marriages that work, that, are successful and happy and people feel fulfilled within them, which is, not as easy as it seems.
Absolutely. It takes nothing worth having is easy, right? So alhamdulillah, I'm a relationship coach, and I like to always say that it's not just relationships with your spouse, but my approach is always first relationship with ourselves, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then, the outer fruits of that is inshallah you can have an awesome relationship with your spouse as well. Mm-hmm. So it definitely takes a lot of work. And oftentimes I find we go into the most important relationship we're ever going to have in our lives very ill prepared. The wedding day is all planned out, but when it comes to actually planning for what comes after, we maybe read an article here and there and we think, okay, well, that's good. Or maybe you had to sit down with an imam and he went over the rights of a husband and wife, but that's not what is really going to prepare you. It's just a small stepping stone, but really prepare you for the challenges and, things that all married couples face. And I think that's what, inshallah, like my mission really is, to dispel the taboos that people have around it and to dispel the discomfort people feel. So in the workshop that I recently had, I started off by asking everyone, I said, who here does not fight in their marriage, right? And no one put their hand up. I'm like, okay, perfect. So we're all in the right place and you don't need to feel shy because we've all got challenges. And I think many times we don't know how to have those authentic conversations within our circles and the friends. And just because you're having issues and maybe you want to get some support doesn't mean there's something wrong, right? And I think that's the challenge a lot of people face. And we don't know where to start.
Because I don't think we really work at any... when you think of, for example, the family, you grow up in a family and you have fights and arguments, but at the end of the day, you eat together, you sleep together, you play together, right? But marriage seems to require something different than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, it almost seems as if we don't have the tools necessary to...
And there's been a shift.
To establish them.
Yeah, and there's been a shift from when our parents were getting married and raised, where I was reading one of the experts in the field of marriage counseling and therapy is what we expect from our spouse today is what traditionally a whole village used to give us.
Yeah, so expectations.
Absolutely. Expectations around, our happiness, our well-being. Like this one person should take away all the turmoil I have in my life and should be the source of my happiness and surprise me every now and then and make sure, he knows what I need before I even need it. So we have all these crazy expectations and we don't even realize it going into marriage. So we can't ignore that, divorce rates are very high in the Muslim community. They match, really the divorce rates across North America. And there's ways around, there's preventive tools we can successfully implement. So when I did do my counseling credentials, I actually don't, I was very... the more I looked into it and the research around it, I was like, I don't want to do counseling because I feel like, alhamdulillah, there's so many great therapists.
There are a lot of counselors.
Yeah, there's
therapists as well are coming up as well.
And, you can go get that help. I'm more focused on the preventative because we're not doing enough there. So we're just waiting for things to happen and then we'll deal with it. So I'm more passionate about let's make sure things, when they do happen, you're armed with the right tools. You know how to navigate that and then you're going to be good.
So what sort of tools do you think a person needs to have a successful marriage?
Yeah, so I think a big chunk that I like to focus on is self-awareness. A lot of us are not, especially, in the Muslim community, I find the age is a bit younger than perhaps other cultures where people get married in North America. So a lot of, even if you're getting married in your 30s, a lot of people don't have the self-awareness around themselves. What is it that are trigger points for them? What kind of baggage do they bring in that has contributed to the way they perceive things? And oftentimes when people are fighting about things, it's not necessarily they're fighting about a certain purchase that they made, but it's maybe their meaning around money. And so the more you understand that, hey, I was raised XYZ way, and that's really tainted or that's really shaped how I view this, and that's why this is such a big issue for me. So I help people build that self-awareness first around themselves, and then we can, the couple come together and identifying areas that maybe are a little weaker and we can strengthen, inshallah. And just being aware of them too allows people to have conversations in a very safe way. Because if we just wait for, there's a really crazy stat where couples on average will wait 6 years of very, toxic conflicts happening till they get counseling. But the sad reality is by then it's too late to come back to a place where you can rectify and you feel safe and you can create that, wholesome environment that you want. And
so let's say there's a couple that's having a lot of problems. How do they step back from that? Because sometimes it can get toxic and volatile, right? Absolutely. There can be a lot of hostility between them. So how do they take a step back then from that and try to work towards building a better relationship?
So, I mean, if it's someone that, if it's a situation where it's happening every now and then, like it's not just continuous toxicity, like there's a lot of negativity in the marriage. So like I said, my goal is to work on it before it gets to that point. So I think it's being aware, having those conversations, having deeper conversations around those issues, and maybe, really scratching at the surface and like, hey, what are we actually fighting about? So I think that step back is like the tools that I provide, and helping them to navigate those conversations is just that. So let's step back from this and actually analyze, what are the patterns that keep coming up for you guys? And like I said, it's much easier to do it when you're not repeatedly been in such a toxic situation for years. Mm-hmm. So if that's a situation, people do definitely need more in-depth counseling, someone who's really gonna, therapist who can help them with that. My goal is that you've got fights, and that's okay, because everyone does. Any healthy marriage has conflicts. But we can help diffuse them. We can fight more intelligently, so that way you are not, it doesn't grow into something bigger that's left unresolved, because sometimes there are issues that, go on for years and years. But oftentimes, alhamdulillah, there's certain tools and studies that, like I said, have been developed by experts in the field that show if you can just pinpoint certain keys, or just speak about it, or have that strong communication and a base where you come at it from, the blow will be much lighter. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what is so key that I'm trying to convey is, it's just about building that strong foundation. It's not to say you're not going to have a conflict-free marriage, because that's unrealistic. And like I said, it's not healthy, but it's how that conflict will impact your marriage, and that it doesn't have to break, what it is. And for me, again, like this journey has been so important, because I've been involved in the community for the last 10 years. I've done, I've worked on so many different levels and so many different with youth and adults and teaching and developing programs. And more, I feel like just getting to the root and realizing the impact that a strong marriage can have on our community, there's nothing that can surpass that. Like by having just a strong relationship with a husband and spouse that's tied to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that, where they are just wholesome and they feed, and give each other that strength, and then the fruits of that to their children, right? And so we could talk about youth issues, but the reality is if there's a really strong home environment, we're already reduced, half the high risk youth that would impact certain things. So I think for me, it was just like really understanding. And I think, alhamdulillah, like through the tradition, also understanding like the Prophet, peace be upon him, the importance he's taught us. There's a really beautiful hadith where the Prophet shares that, all the shayateen come to the head shaitan one day, and they're like saying all the things that they've done. And, they're waiting for praise. And then the one devil comes and says, well, I had husband, wife, today fight, and they separated. And the head devil's like, you did the best thing. Mm-hmm. And I think that hadith is so profound, because when I read it, and now with the lens of like the work I'm doing, I'm like, no wonder he got the biggest praise, because when you break a family, you've already weakened the community. Mm-hmm. Right? And so I think for us to realize like this isn't just an investment in yourself, but if we really care about change in our community, in our society, on the larger level as an ummah, it starts right here by building that, and the fruits of it, we're all going to benefit from. And not just obviously like everyone benefits, and, a couple benefits when they have that wholesome marriage, and your child is going to benefit from seeing that modeled as well. So I'm really passionate. I get so excited about it. And when I see like light bulbs, like in the workshop I had, and I see light bulbs go off for couples, like, oh my God, like, yeah, we do that. And oh my God, we could approach it this way, or that really spoke to me. I love seeing that. And it's like, yes, like, I do think a lot of people are suffering unnecessarily, when just simple conversations and tools would really help them go a long way.
I feel like a big part of it is communication, right? So what is your advice about how to navigate, for example, different communication styles between a husband and wife?
And it's not just communication, but it's the quality of that communication, right? Because you could sit there and have a conversation with someone for 2 hours, and not really walk away knowing them at all. Whereas you and I have talked for like 10 minutes, and I'm like, wow, Safiyyah, I really feel like I know you. There's a great tool. I have a bi-weekly newsletter, and so I had sent actually like questions to have on your date night. Mm-hmm. And so even in the workshops I do, I'll give questions. So we've never even explored. It's really getting curious about your spouse. Mm-hmm. A lot of us just think like, okay, well, I know my husband or wife, and
I lived with him or her
exactly.
for like 10 years. I know.
And so it was funny, because I had a couple that was married 15 years, and I had a couple that was married 3 months. Mm-hmm. And so one of the questions I had was, who is your spouse's biggest role model, or someone they look up to, like a mentor? And this was like and it was crazy, because so many of the couples were like, I've never asked my spouse that. Mm-hmm. Or like, what's your spouse's greatest fear? And so that's communication, because once again, I believe that if you build that strong base and you have that conversation before things happen, it allows your bond to be so much tighter. Because then when those things happen, you're so deeply connected that it's going to be okay. But when all you do is watch Netflix together while you're having dinner, and, you know, you have like just surface level comments like, how was your day? You know, the typical errand things, that connection hasn't been formed. So it's so important that couples once a week take out 15 minutes, like Dr. Gottman used this exercise, like 15 minutes. You're not allowed to talk about errands or kids. If you don't have kids, just don't talk about work. And you just sit there and just really check in with each other. And so
what about, I mean, I find that couples today are just so busy, like they're stressed, and they have so many obligations, and it's like, it's kind of like a rat race, you know, their work, their work schedule, and then the traffic, but then, you know, kids and, you know, extended family and friends, it's just overwhelming. There's almost no time to develop that relationship.
And so, you know, my answer to that would be, we make time for the things that matter to us. And sometimes it's that whole like 80-20 rule, which, you know, Sheikh Mohammed Al-Sharif uses a lot. So by putting sometimes 20% of the effort, you could get 80% of the results. So you may think you're too busy to have that deep conversation with your spouse and just really connect. But I bet you that 10-minute conversation, and I know I need that. I'll tell my husband, like, okay, I'm having a stressful day. I need to like connect when you come home. And then that's going to just like help center me and ground me to allow me to, you know, do the other things that I have on my plate tomorrow and whatever it is. So I do think by having that strong base, it's going to help and make it easier to go through all the other like chaotic aspects we have of our life. But yeah, I mean, I understand busyness is an issue, but I don't think, like, if we're really going to be honest with ourselves, we're on our phone for at least an hour. You know, like, just open up your phone, everybody, look at it right now. How much time do you spend on your social media? Take 20 minutes away from that and give that to your spouse. So I think for the things that matter, we will make time, regardless of what's on our plate.
We talked about expectations in the beginning and how they've just ballooned, right? Yeah. So, you know, what is your advice? Should we cut back on our expectations? I mean, I also have this expectation, for example, that my spouse and I will help each other grow and develop. And, you know, that's a really big expectation.
Well, and that's a good one. That's actually a more reasonable, right? That's a good expectation.
Oh, it's more reasonable.
Yeah, like that you want to grow together. He's not responsible for your growth, but you would like to do it together. So that's a good thing. I think number one is first really being honest with ourselves of what are my expectations. A lot of people, Safiyyah, you'd be surprised how they lack that awareness. They don't realize that when I'm sad, I actually need my husband to make me happy, or I need him to surprise me or give me gifts for me to feel good about myself. Right. And I think that's dangerous, because when you don't even know you're putting all that pressure on that one person, you're not going to be able to dispel it. So my first step and advice would be, you know, we work on that awareness. Like, what are your expectations? And that's where, like I was saying, my model of first working on the self and then with the love, because there are certain expectations that we should only have of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's a place in our heart and in our lives, inshallah, continuously, that only Allah can fill. And a lot of that turmoil starts when we're only expecting it from that one person, or we're expecting that they should be doing that. So I think step one is let's, you know, be honest with ourselves, make the list. What are some of those expectations that you're putting that you don't even realize you are? And then from there, I think, you know, it's letting your spouse know. And you'd be really surprised at how many people are fighting about something. And then just now, when we work on that exercise of self-awareness, I'm like, wow, like I didn't realize I was, you know, we were fighting with this because I always expected you to lift me up when I was having, you know, a bad day at work, and I was looking to you for that. Right. And so it's really enabling a person to take control of that aspect of their, you know, responsibility for themselves and how they react to things, and processing that. Like, there's so much individual work that we can do. And so kind of like, I think that's powerful. Like, for someone to feel that, like, yeah, I can, number one, be the agent of my own change. And then I'm going to see that, inshallah, in my relationship. So I think number one is just, we're not aware of a lot of these expectations that we put and the pressure.
Do you think it's important for us to center our relationship around God? Do you think that adds something to the marriage?
I think that's the most beautiful way to have a marriage. And like, that's, you know, like that. I once again, there's so many people that could be doing marital coaching and are that come from a different perspective or tradition. And for me, it's so important to have it through the Islamic perspective. I feel like there's so much richness that our religion adds to our life with our relationships. So my approach definitely is having a God-centered marriage. And what does that look like? What is that definition? You know, it's making sure that it always comes back to, why are we together? So one of the questions I always pose in my premarital sessions I do with couples, I'll ask, you know, why are you getting married? What's the purpose of you two sitting here and wanting to invest this time right now, planning your life together. And I think when we can remind ourselves that it's for something greater than this dunya, it's always going to allow you to come back, inshallah, with whatever's going on, because this person's helping me get to Jannah. Like, we're on that journey together, and it is going to make things so much more meaningful. It's going to, inshallah, it's going to be so much more fulfilling, and as it should be, because then you're really serving your purpose. And I think anything we do in life, if it's not fulfilling that purpose, that's when we feel that sadness, and where a lot of us feel that pull, because your fitra, your natural inclination, wants to steer towards God. So when you're giving it everything else, you're going to feel that uneasiness that a lot of us, it comes out in different forms.
That's so beautifully put. Thank you, Razia. I hope that people will partake in your counseling and coaching sessions.
Yes, I'm excited to have some sessions in Toronto.
Oh, that's great. When are they coming up?
So I'm hoping later in the year I'll be doing some workshops. I call them marriage workshops, making marriage work. So we're excited to hopefully have those. The dates aren't set yet.
All right. We'll let our audience know when they're available. Thank you very much, Razia.
Thank you.